It's game 3 of a very intense match of Yugioh. Last game, you barely managed to pull out a win after playing with a bad hand. While he does his combo, he takes some time to make sure he can play around hand traps. He declares every effect and sets up his chains carefully. Near the end of his combos, you begin to think about how to use the cards in your hand to properly break their board. All of a sudden, time is called. You lose the round because somewhere in your opponent's combo, he gained 200 life points. You didn't even get to play a card in your hand. It's unfortunate, but that's just how it goes. You move on to the next round. But you start to think about it more. Your opponent's been stalling, maybe not by much, but by taking a few extra seconds here and there to extend his already long combo, he took the game to time. Built into his side and extra deck was the card that burned for damage, a card that had no other purpose. This was always the plan, to play in the time and win game 3 for free with as minimal interaction from the opponent as possible. It is a legal form of stalling baked into the game with no recourse or much counterplay from players. This is a frustratingly common situation players get put into in modern Yu-Gi-Oh! Due to Konami's terrible time rules, players are rewarded for implementing an inherently toxic and uninteractive strategy. End of match procedures are as follows. Players are given 45 minutes per round at an official Yu-Gi-Oh! Event. This includes side decking, shuffling, and the matches themselves. Once time runs out, players continue until the end of the current phase. Then a win is determined by which player has more life points. This means that when the clock is getting low, a player has every incentive to stall for time to just get some cheeky damage in and get a zero interaction win. Since this rule was added in 2018, players have gone out of their way to abuse this ruling and complain about it. In modern times, most decks find built-in ways to gain or lose life points. Rika Sun Avalon have a stupid life point gain built into the combo. Super Heavy Samurai have a synchro monster, Ninja Sarutobi, only ran because it happens to do 500 damage. Despia, of course, makes Masquerade the Blazing Dragon for burn damage. Recent topping lists have moved it to the side deck, as its main purpose is to cheese games going in the time. Vanquish Souls have a burn damage enabler built into Heavy Burger, etc, etc. It's not to say you need to be able to do burn damage to win, as certain decks in this format like Kashtira and Labyrinth tend not to run these cheeky burn cards. But having the option is definitely a significant advantage held by those decks that can. Burning in Time is also a gimmick that tends to vary in importance depending on the format. With some formats, such as Tearlament Ishizu, with ridiculously long mirror matches, would have players resorting to running cards, such as Ghost Sister and Spooky Dogwood, to try and eke out a win in time going second. So, why did Konami implement this ruling in the first place? Was the old system that bad? Old time rules worked as follows. Instead of ending the game the phase time is called, players would be given 3 extra turns to try and win the game, on top of finishing the current turn. On one hand, this meant that players could almost certainly get the back and forth they needed, even in time. On the other hand, it meant that tournaments were always outrageously long, since a few turns could easily last 20 or more minutes, even with neither player slow playing. Having a tournament go till 1 to 2 AM is not just draining on the players, but also financially harmful to Konami or whatever game store is hosting the event. Longer events mean a larger fee for renting the spaces and for paying staff. The length of tournaments was a point of complaint from most of the community, so Konami addressed it with the current rules, sort of an overreaction to try and make events shorter. It did largely work, although a lot of tournaments still end up going for absurd periods of time, mostly due to delays and a naturally large tournament size. So, is there a way to change Yu-Gi-Oh's time rules to be more fair without making tournaments drag on for absurd periods of time? In my opinion, there is a solid solution. We could use a chess clock. This would involve giving both players a set amount of time to use throughout their turn as they see fit, usually about 20 to 25 minutes per player. When a player has priority, it's their time that ticks down. If time runs out, they get a game loss, and the match ends. I've tried this casually and it's great. It's also close to the system used for Master Duel and other online simulators. There are, of course, 2 problems with this solution. First, with how many steps a game's combos can have, it can potentially be annoying to have to hit the timer over and over again. Personally, I don't think this is that bad, because we can set up the timer to avoid this problem. Second, and more realistically, providing these timers to events could be a logistical issue. Konami nor most stores wouldn't spend money on physical clocks, nor would Konami be savvy enough to create a functional phone app for a clock either. Yu-Gi-Oh! Moron is barely functional as is. So what does this mean for what Yu-Gi-Oh! Should do? I personally would like to see some change to the time rules. I understand we can't go back to the old system ever. I mean, imagine the old time rules in Tearlament Ishizu format. But we should have something that isn't as toxic as the current time system is. At the very least, give both players a single turn. It's not perfect, but it certainly would be better. I will also say that time rules really sour a lot of newer players' opinions on the game. I've seen scumbags at locals cheese out a win in time because a new player didn't fully understand the rules or grasp how big of a thing going to time would be. This has led to shouting matches between players, and it's just a terrible situation all around, but Konami should consider situations like this when designing policy that is implemented at all levels. So yeah, that's my take on time rules in Yu-Gi-Oh! If you've liked this video, make sure to jizz on that subscribe button. I know it sounds weird, but according to the YouTube algorithm god MatPat, I should be telling people to do uncomfortable things to that subscribe button. Apparently, I also need to be more aggressive with my YouTube content to be successful. But unfortunately, I can't sell my soul like Dulogs, or just steal people's content like Farfa. I'm rambling now, but thanks for watching and I'll see you next time.